Grab a seat. You really got the visual during that about kind of Peter getting called out to walk on the water. God saying, come on out. It's like, it's deep, it does not look stable, there's waves going. How am I going to do that? And we can only do it with God. Right? We can only get certain places in life with God. And when we step out, he says, don't look at the waves. Look at me, or you're going to see. Stay focused on me. And you're going to need that this morning because it's been a challenging week for a lot of people. I was at a conference in Arizona with international life coaches, and I was with Youssef from Egypt, and they live with some fear and terror in Egypt. I was with Iñaki from Manila, Philippines. There's some real tensions there. It didn't seem to matter who I was with or whether it was Europe and our brothers and sisters in the Netherlands or folks here in the U.S. There is some fear out there. There are some threats. This week, people in Hawaii got an emergency alert. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Do you hear this news story, right? 40 minutes they had till that emergency alert was corrected. 40 minutes. Our citizens in Hawaii this week all got an emergency alert from our government that says ballistic missiles are headed your way. Seek shelter. This is not a drill. You were saying you had some girlfriends there, right, for something? That's
Yeah,
pretty...
big group of friends. They were freaking out.
Yeah.
Where you go? Into the Starbucks? Seek shelter from ballistic missiles.
There's a lot of truth to that. Like,
Where do you go?
yeah, I mean, Starbucks is good. But, I don't know about ballistic missiles, right? Yeah, terrifying. A lot of anxiety for people. And why would they have that anxiety? Because there are some real threats. There's been saber rattling in our culture and in our world recently. There's apparently a guy in North Korea, just a short, interesting, provocative ruler who's apparently been launching missiles over Tokyo and different places and is now telling us he's got missiles that can reach our territory. The Pacific coast, certainly the Hawaiian Islands. So when you become aware of real potential for real evil, real threats, it becomes really scary. And we live in a world where there's been a lot of fear because there's a lot of crazy leaders. I'm a World War II guy. I love kind of history, as many of you know, but Joseph Mengele, the orchestrator of the Auschwitz gas chambers, Reinhard Heydrich, Heinrich Himmler. This guy was so sick. He made furniture for his home from bones and remnants from Jews. Unbelievable illness out there. Incredible without going to the total dark side. It's just shocking. Adolf Eichmann. He said he'd happily kill his own father if he was ordered to do so. It's like, I don't even know how to process that. Let alone Adolf Hitler and the 6 to 7 million Jews that they killed. These are their own citizens that apparently were just too different, too not like them, too not a reflection of self. It's just crazy. I was looking through history. I'm like, you can go back to the 1st century. You don't have to go far. You can go back, you can go forward. Caligula, Nero, these Roman emperors. Sick. And regarding Christians, they would behead them, fillet them, skewer them, light them aflame like torches in the Colosseum. really perverted, crazy, sadistic. Saddam Hussein killed a lot of his own family members in the most perverted, sick ways, and loved to watch it, by the way. Osama bin Laden, mastermind of 9/11. I mean, there are Stalins and Mussolinis and Hitlers. They've been from the Roman emperors to the present. You can go back to the pharaohs of Egypt if you want. You can go to our day. The Khomeinis, the Kim Jong-uns. It's unbelievable. Kim Jong-un, his father started the Korean War. 3 million people lost in the Korean War in the 50s. Well, you probably have a grandfather or a relative or someone who actually fought in that war. Because this knucklehead decided he wanted to take territory and wanted to expand his kingdom, his reign, his rule. I see people with t-shirts with Mao on it. I'm like, you're kidding. You're tracking. He killed 70 million of his own citizens. Just sick. Ivan the Terrible. Idi Amin from Uganda. Genghis Khan probably killed between 20 and 60 million of his own folks. I mean, I can't even put numbers. It doesn't even, I can't put my head around it. Attila the Hun asked a gal to marry him, and she said no. So he killed her and 11,000 friends that he thought might be related or somehow descendants of her. Like, just, you don't do what I want, we take you out. Well, we don't need to go through all the crazies, right? That's enough depression. What's the point? The point is, those crazies are no more. Caligula is no more. He's done. Nero is no more. The Stalins, the Mussolinis, the Hitlers, the Husseins, Kim Jong-un, his days are numbered. I'm just telling you, you don't have to live in fear. His days are numbered. How do I know? Because all of history is filled with evil people who thought they had their day. They are no more. God is sovereign. He's good. Righteousness, justice, love will win the day, and you don't just have to wait for the second coming. You don't have to just go, well, one day God will come back and make it all right. He certainly will do that, so we certainly have that hope, which is awesome. He's doing it now. He's doing it now in our lifetime. I can tell you, and you can take it to the bank, the crazy, evil people you are hearing in the news will be done with. Even in a fallen, broken world, he's still going to be victorious. It's not all about waiting passively in some holy huddle till he consummates history and makes it all right. He's doing it now. These leaders are but dust in terms of human history. Tumbleweeds. And this morning, because of this crazy week, I thought, well, let's kind of unpack Psalm 83. I've never taught Psalm 83. It's got two crazy guys, a Khomeini and a Kim Jong-un in its day, Oreb and Zeb. I know you've done all your homework. I know these are guys you know really well, right? If you're like me, when I was in Psalm 83, I'm like, Oreb and Zeb. I've never even, Oreo? What? I mean, I know what an Oreo is. What's an Oreb? I mean, I had to even get my own little dictionary out and my Bible dictionary and kind of go, who are these guys? I've never even heard of these guys. And then it dawned on me. That's the point. We've never heard of them because they're tumbleweeds in history. These were the Khomeinis and the Kim Jong-uns of the biblical days. These were two Persian Median princes that ruled and governed and were terrorizing the people of God. These were people that wanted to take Israel out, God's chosen people. followers of God, these were people that wanted to torment and do away with them. And there's always those people in human history. They're here today. They're here in the first century. You're going to see God's word is as relevant today as it was 21 centuries ago, and more. So you ready to study Orb and Zeb? Can't wait. Take it in, because I'm not preaching on Orb and Zeb ever again. Okay, this is like a one-time special. Let's start in Psalm 83. I'm going to start in verse 1. We have 18 verses, and we're just going to do the whole psalm. And I think you're going to see some fresh things as God really confounds evil. And of course, you're going to see the psalmist is really in a petition of prayer. The posture is, oh God, please deal with the craziness, the madness, the sadism. Verse 1, oh God, do not remain silent. Do not turn a deaf ear. Do not stand aloof, oh God. Right? That means, God, this is not the time to be quiet. God, do not give us the silent treatment. No. Don't just sit there. Don't do nothing. This is maddening. Verse 2. You see how your enemies grow and growl? How your foes rear their heads? Surely, God, you see, right? Behold, they're hateful. They are growling. It means roaring. Basically, they're making noise and commotion. They're firing off missiles. They're posturing. They're getting attention. We've got a nuclear program. We will use it. And fire and fury dialogue is going back and forth. Our foes are rearing their heads, in other words. They're exalting themselves over you, God. They're rebelling. They're proud. They're like posturing. They're sticking their chest out. They're like, we're ready to attack. We are North Korea. Interesting. Verse 3. With cunning, they conspire against your people, and they plot against those you cherish. The psalmist says, God, are you tracking? With sly, cunning, craftiness, they conspire and connive against your people who follow you. And they plot with their shrewd little plans against those that you cherish. Those who are the apple of your eye. Those that are part of your family of faith. They want to take them out. Oh, it's so shrewd and so crafty and it's so cunning. It's just, we love you, followers of God. It's just we don't really want your prayers before the football game. That would just, can't you see how that would just lopside the whole game? It would just so disenfranchise so many people. We're just asking that you don't pray there. And by the way, the graduations, the benediction thing, we're just asking to take that out. It's just so sly and coy. And by the way, while you're in the workplace, Bible studies, and you don't bring up spiritual things. Just keep your faith on a Sunday morning, which is just we love that about you. Just good for you. Just don't bring it here. Just in terms of sensitivity, and we want to value tolerance and diversity, and we're just in our most sly, cunning, conniving way, just trying to gut you like a piñata and just make sure your faith doesn't infect or get contagious with anyone else. But you can bring your flu here. We're fine with that. Yeah. But don't bring anything else. Right? Just little politically correct, conniving language to gut you of the very power and integrity of who you are. They plot against those who you cherish, God. Verse 4. Here's kind of what they say. Come, they say. Let us destroy them as a nation so that Israel's name is remembered no more. Who would say that? Could anyone just say, let's wipe Israel off the face of the earth? I mean, no one believes anyone really means that, right? They don't want to wipe it out. I mean, I don't know what the UN is talking about, but just because in the Security Council they all vote against Israel doesn't mean, these people have wanted to wipe Israel out for decades, centuries, millennia. And they're not shy about it. We don't want you to remember the name of Israel. This is a nation we're hoping is out of existence. We are hostile to God. We are hostile to his people. We are hostile to your Bibles. We've had many attempts over the centuries to try to just do away with the good book. But they can't do away with it because we find copies that we have somewhere and people actually have it on their hearts, so they reproduce it. Remember, I've shared with you when I went in the Soviet Union as a missionary back in the 80s, took some students in through Helsinki, Finland, went into Leningrad, St. Petersburg, and they got strip searched. And they confiscated all our Bibles. And the students' eyes, who were just totally dilated, like, this is like a movie. I'm like, no, the movie is reflecting what life is like. People don't want that book in their country. But you've memorized good chunks of the Word. We had already delegated and had some assignments. So I'm like, start writing. One gal had memorized the book of James. I'm like, well, we're going to have the book of James. Another had memorized parts of the Gospel of John and Matthew and Luke. I'm like, just write it down. They can't take that away from you. If it's in your head and your heart, they can't take the Word that chews inside and stirs in your soul. Verse 5. So they want to destroy the nation, and with one mind they plot together, they form an alliance against you. What? Yeah. One perverted heart, one consent. It means with one unanimous decision, these nations meet at the UN and form an alliance in a united axis of evil, a confederate with agreements and pacts and covenants against the nation of Israel, against the people of God. It's interesting, we live in a time where our country seems to be taking a little slightly different posture this last year and actually pushing against some of this, which is really delightful for me to see how it's going to go and where it's going to go. And who could imagine the people God would use to do that? It's always surprising to me. Don't want to mention any names. But if God can use a Caesar to get Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem to fulfill his prophecy, if he can use a Nebuchadnezzar, if he can use a donkey, he can use anyone, the most surprising people, to actually confront and confound me and the nations as we go, wow, God, you apparently are aware of this crazy alliance. The psalmist goes in verse 6 to actually name. Let me tell you some of the enemies. Let me tell you who they are. The tents, which is saying the families, the tribes of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagrites, Byblos, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, with the people of Tyre. Verse 8, even Assyria. Yeah, Putin and Syria and others have joined forces with them to reinforce Lot's descendants. There are alliances being formed. It's not just one, but different nations in the Eastern world have plotted together to collude against God's people. Is this just crazy, right? This is like the psalmist, this is before Christ, like centuries before Christ. This has been going on for thousands of years. So when you're thinking, God, the person in the cubicle next to me is driving me nuts. My boss is evil. My neighbor seems crazy. God's like, I know, they're everywhere. They rule nations. They govern. But trust me, I will deal with them. And you don't have to wait for the second coming. I will deal with them. Their days are numbered. Verse 9. Psalmist is now like, punish them. Destroy. Do to them as you did to Midian, as you did to Sisera and Jabin at the river of Kishon. We don't even have time to unpack all that, but if you go to Judges 4 and 5, you'll see, like, do to them as you kind of destroyed these knuckleheads before in verse 10, or perhaps like those who perished at Endor and became like dung on the ground. Give them the bad end that Endor had. And without going into that story, which is just incredible, the psalmist is like, I really like the story where you came down and wiped out evil people. And you wiped them out. Their bodies rotted like manure and it smelled like dung It was so catastrophic. It goes on to give visual language, which us Californians can appreciate, and we'll see that in just a second, as he talks about fire. But first, verse 11, make their nobles, make their godless leaders, if you will, die like Oreb and Zeb. Oreb and Zeb are recorded for us in Judges 7, and as you'll see, it goes on to say, and the princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, which is in Judges 8. These are two Khomeini, Kim Jong-uns, who had their day and were launching their missiles and threatening the people of God and the civilized world of the day. God, the psalmist says, make them like you did with Oreb and Zeb. And you know about Oreb and Zeb because you don't know about Oreb and Zeb. Whatever you did with them, we've never heard of them. Would you make them like that? We don't even know who these guys are. Yeah, will you make them like that? Because Oreb and Zeb and these other cats, verse 12 says, they said things like this. Let's take and grab for ourselves possession of the pasture lands of God. These were the people who, after Hitler signed his peace accord and Chamberlain went back to England and said, we have peace in our time. It wasn't but days before he invaded Poland, before he invaded other countries, before he started moving into France, before he started taking over Austria. It's like, what happened, Chamberlain? Oh yeah, you're a Christian Scientist, so you don't believe evil is real. Oh yeah, and Lord Astor, who spoke up in Parliament, yeah, she's also a Christian Scientist too, so she didn't think evil was real. It is real.
Really?
Really?
They were Christian Scientists.
Yeah. Oh, I noticed that. Because we can't talk about religion, faith, as if theology doesn't impact anything. But what you believe about God does. And I am a Protestant, a follower of Christ. And I believe there is evil. And it needs to be dealt with. And thank God there's Chamberlains who say, look, I don't know about his policies, but we're going to never, never, ever, ever give up. We're going to fight this. Evil will not win the day. I'm not just talking about in the end, finally all evil will be dealt with. It will be, which will be glorious. So I want you to know, if you look through history, these cats have been dealt with. God is using us in a fallen world still to eradicate evil to this day. And we don't have to live in fear. Even though they grab God's pasture lands, even though, they want to take territory, even though they're expansive and grandiose. Verse 13, the psalmist goes on, make them like, what does your translation say? Tumbleweeds. Any other translation? Make them like tumbleweeds. I grew up out here, and in the early 60s, it was a complete desert. And there were tumbleweeds, right? We lived off Lyons Avenue, and we drive down Lyons Avenue. That was, by the way, before even we had the 5 freeway coming through town. I saw them build the Golden State Freeway when I was 4. I used to go up and see the trucks, and my dad kept saying, this road's going to change this whole city. I mean, when you put a freeway through, it's like all of a sudden we were on the map. But we would take the old road, which is still there, with our horse and buggy, right? And go down to Northridge where real people lived. But we'd come back here. It was a desert here. You would go down Lyons Avenue, and there was just desert on the side with tumbleweeds blowing, and tumbleweeds are just uprooted dead plants, right? And we would be driving, and then it's like, there they go, the wind would blow out here. It was just so dusty, and then it's like, they're gone, go, here they come this way, You literally, it was like, stop, go, and then they'd get stuck in your car, and then of course they get under, and then you drag them, and you just hear that sound, and God says, make them like tumbleweeds. They're just uprooted. They're but dust. They're like chaff. These are like weeds. Just blow them away. Just blow them away. our city is still, if I can confess, in a little bit of collusion, trying to help foster the fantasy that we don't actually live in a desert.
Awesome town.
Right? We're an awesome town. It's an oasis. There's no desert here. In fact, I don't know if you know, we have ordinances in town that say you cannot put in cactus. You can't put in palm trees. I've been part of enterprises where we'd like to put 6 palm trees. That's a major ordeal to get palm trees approved. There are some in town, but they're like, don't make it look like a desert. We got everyone fooled. Don't add rock gardens. We don't want rock gardens in town. Try to put one of those in. You might get an approval, but it's like we've all decided like guidelines for here is let's make it look like a giant park. Like we're close to the ocean and it's beautiful and there's green grass and things can grow here, but they don't really. So, make them like tumbleweeds, stubble, desert waste, my God. Make these evil leaders like chaff blown away before the wind. The implication is blow them away. Just blow them away. Verse 14, for those of us who've seen these California fires, which is so tragic, because what happens with these fires, whether Santa Barbara or Ventura or San Diego or here, right, it's the wind that's the problem. You know, a fire can start, it's like, well, we can get that, we got a great fire department. But then the wind picks up, and it's like, before you know, it's like, gosh, the thing's just taking off. And when it involves people in their homes, it's terrible. When it involves evil, look what the psalmist says, verse 14. As fire consumes the forest, or a flame sets the mountain ablaze, pursue them with your tempest. Like when it comes to evil, Lord, if that wildfire wants to just take off, if that fire wants to sprint up that mountainside, when it comes to evil, go, get them, chase them, hunt them down, verse 15, terrify them with your storm. Char them, charbecue them. So that was a Dave translation, it's not in the original Greek, but just adding value. In verse 16, cover their faces with shame, Lord. In other words, redden their faces with dishonor. So that they will seek your name. I think that's so interesting that in the midst of such a truthful passage, there's still a little bit of grace in there that if you can change their hearts and they can turn to you, so be it. But other than that, wipe them out. Verse 17, may they ever be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. In other words, confound them, trouble them, disappoint them, fill them with anxiety, humiliate them, perish them. And finally, verse 18, our final verse for the day. What do we do with Orb and Zeeb? What do we do with Khomeini's and Kim Jong-un's? Let them know, verse 18. In other words, help them to realize, turn the light on for them, that you, whose name is the Lord, the one eternal one, that you alone, you exclusively, and only you are the most high over all the earth. Hawaii got a wake-up call this week. Ballistic missiles are headed your way. Take cover. Apparently in a Starbucks. And I don't know how good that's going to work. Evil people have their finger on the button, though I'm told we have a bigger button.
And it works.
And apparently it works. Threats of fire and fury. That's been going on since Orb and Zeeb, and we don't even know who those guys are. And no one's going to remember Kim Jong-un or others when it comes to the annals of history. God is the only one true God. He is the Most High. He's the supreme ruler. He's the head of the cosmos. He is the CEO. He is the supreme commander. And the psalmist is saying here, Lord, deal with the evil. Make them like tumbleweeds. Blow them away like chaff. And if they want to turn to you, fantastic. But help them to see that there's only one. There's only one. And it's one we know. It's the one we have a relationship with. It's the one why we started our week together going, yes, thank you, Lord. Is evil real? Of course. I gave you some stats earlier. They can do a lot of damage. But not for long. You don't have to wait for the second coming. God will take them out and is taking them out and is sovereign, and we win the day. Amen. Okay. Since I'll never be preaching on organs yet again in my lifetime, this is your chance to T&T, teach and talk. To talk. Any thoughts? What did you learn about God? What came to your mind? What insights did he give you? How did he nudge you?
Well, I'd like to say that, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the people that founded this country knew that. They saw the history, and they set this government up to constantly be struggling against each other, the three branches. And that's what keeps absolute power from becoming in any one of those branches and saves us actually. So when you look at your government fighting it like they always seem to do and never getting along, it's working.
Yeah, there is that, right? There was a period of 8 years in a row that some people were saying it's the end of the world. Then we got a new guy. Now other people are saying it's the end of the world, but they don't get to rule for long. And hopefully they have the consent of the people. And ultimately, they are leaders under God, right? Under God. They do have some of the answer to.
When you were talking about how keep that at church, keep it away from your workplace, it reminded me of our national anthem. Because sometimes I notice my teachers at school don't sing the part under God. They just sing everything else in the national anthem. But they still haven't taken that out of the anthem.
Yeah. Well, it's sly, right? That's what the song, it's so conniving, it's so subtle, it's just little, it's no big deal. It's just, we're just going to take him out a little bit. Eventually we'll take him off the currency, but not because we don't believe in God. It's, we just want to slowly not offend anyone, right? And all of a sudden the goal is to remove and to posture and to be proud. And so who is the pledge to us? Right? If it's not under God, if it has no boundaries, if there's nothing bigger than ourselves, nothing transcendent, oh yeah, that would make us a little tyrant.
But we're having hard times, so could you pray for us?
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
is a pinch one, because it was in 1953 when we added under God to the pledge. And the whole country was at that place then. Now, 2018, we're all the way the other end of the swing.
Yeah, we had the war to end all wars, right? World War I, and then we had another one, which was like, what just happened? Like within 20 years.
That was practice.
Like, wow. Then the Korean War starts, right? And there's a sense of, wait a minute, maybe we do need to put God back. And we do. We take him out, and we add him back, and then we take him out. And
I don't know that story about what happened in 1953 when we added under God. What is
You didn't know that?
No. Can you tell it? Do you know what
Well,
happened?
it was added to the pledge in 1953. You weren't in school then, you're too young.
Yeah.
she's way too young.
And when it was added, it was a big deal, and of course in school, and that was the time when Eisenhower was becoming president, and the country was very patriotic, and everybody believed in God, whether they did or not, everybody sort of believed in God. And the pledge was added, and of course, you're too young to remember too.
Thank you.
It was a big deal when your teachers were teaching in the new pledge to not put a pause in there. one nation under God. And if you said one nation under God to stop, no, that's not the way it is. It's one nation under God. But over the years, that's evolved to one nation, comma, under God. But it was an act of Congress that created that. So it's a very recent thing.
Why not the pause?
I don't know.
Oh.
I was, in grammar school at the time, so it was just a big deal. Make sure when you say it's one nation under God, and if you look at the punctuation of it, there is no comma until you get one nation under God, comma, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know why. But it was just part of the story.
Well, thank you. That's encouraging.
Absolutely. Any other closing thoughts? Yeah, Maureen?
I love the scriptural prayers in the Bible, and that
Yes.
first verse in Psalm 83. When we're overwhelmed, we can say, "Oh God, do not remain silent. Do not turn a deaf ear. Do not stand aloof, oh God." And we can
Yeah.
pray that, and sometimes the news just is overwhelming,
Yes.
but
it
that's
is.
a really good prayer to fall back on.
Absolutely, and it's here the psalmist already knows God always listens. He knows he's omniscient, omnipresent. But he's like, I fear that you're not listening, and I fear that the silence means you're like tuned out. I fear that you might not be attuned to my needs. And just confesses it. It's so transparent and real. And you can be too. Are you hearing me? Are you seeing what's happening? Things are melting down. He hears. He knows. He sees. He cares. Well, let me pray for us. Whatever you're dealing with, I just hope you know if God can deal with the most evil of rulers, and He has. Amen? He has. He has. He will. He'll continue to. He can deal with the cuckoo thing on your neighborhood, in your cul-de-sac, at your workplace, in your family, or whatever it is, because ultimately those who are faithful and who follow will last forever and ever, and everyone else will be what? Tumbleweed. Dust. Chaff. Heavenly Father, thank you for this reminder. Your scriptures are timeless and true. And, I'm thinking, Lord, too, as we kind of go into our closing of the service, I'm not even feeling like singing, to be honest with you. I just want to give back of our tithes and offerings as a way to keep you first in our life. And I'm thinking during this song, Lord, I just want this to be my prayer. I love you. I'm grateful for you. I want to meditate and be thoughtful and be prayerful. Just give us a little space here to close out quietly and privately as we give back. Not only of our finances, but of our prayers too. I love you, Lord. Lift my voice to worship you. You only. You alone are supreme. That's in your name we pray. Everyone said, give back and take a little prayer time. Let's just close out with some private prayer.